All right, folks, welcome back to Local Football Flavor. It's been quite a week one in the NFL. Quite frankly, it's been crazy. My fantasy teams are all out of whack. I don't know what's going on, but what I do know is there are some definite players that were absolute studs this week that I'm really excited about looking forward. And in today's episode, we're going to take a look at those studs and see what might happen this fantasy season.
Welcome to Local Football Flavor, where we talk to local fans to get the real information of what's going on with their team. Yeah, and welcome all team players. Thank you for clicking like and subscribe and being a part of the Team Player Nation here. So, Bob, yeah, as you said, we had some players do some things that we didn't expect, and I think that's kind of what we're going to highlight here on this show. Some players that, they put up some numbers, but who saw them coming? Steelers
And
defense.
absolutely, that's absolutely true, Joe. This week of the fantasy season, this week of the NFL season was absolutely crazy. Mm-hmm. Guys that we thought were going to do really well ended up putting up a goose egg, and guys that were unexpected did really well. And even so, there were a lot of players that we knew were pretty good that had talent in new situations. We weren't sure what was going to happen. Well, let's just say that we might have had a couple things wrong about these players, but for the most part, Fantasy Nation, we had a lot of these guys in our top boards, but they just surprised us on how well they actually did.
Yeah, and likewise, we also had some fantasy studs or some fantasy duds rather that I'd love to give you a highlight reel for, but we didn't. In fact, earlier in the week, if you haven't seen, I brought out one about Cam Akers. He got the ball like 4 times, and I summed up in one play why he should never get the ball again. So if you haven't seen it, check out the episode. I'm going to try to get YouTube to put it on the top of the screen right now. But Cam Akers out on that boat. I know that I had a lot of belief in Devontae Smith. I feel like Philadelphia is still scoring touchdowns right now, and that guy didn't do anything.
And the thing is about Cam Akers is that offense runs through Stafford and Kupp, and Akers is quite an afterthought. We had someone respond to us on, I believe it was Twitter, who shared that they still believe in Cam Akers, and quite frankly, I mean, he could do really well moving forward. The only issue is that you didn't draft him really high, so you shouldn't have to worry about him as much.
I'd cap him, Bob.
For those people that do, it could be a problem that you don't have somebody else lined up. And there's a lot of players we can say that for. Cam Akers got 0, but a lot of studs that were supposed to be studs ended up being duds and got like 8 points. So, I mean, there's not that much difference from 0 to 8 this week because you either won by a lot or you got blown out. I don't see a lot of close games and fantasy matches this week around the internet, around Twitter, TikTok. So, I mean, that's one of those things that you really have to look at going forward with your lineup is guys like Cam Akers, Zeke. Where's the volume? Did they get there? And with Akers, it just wasn't there. It wasn't in the game script. And will it be there for the future games? Who knows? Seems to have that they have trust in Henderson, but Akers is talented, so we'll see. I'm not ready to get up on him yet, but I just wouldn't start him.
Yeah, that's a fair point. And like I said, I kept Akers. I was on that bus as much as he could be. They were giving him the ball for torn ACL when he wasn't healed. I thought he was going to get every single chance from McVay, and it hurts. But
to end the talk on Akers here, the thing with him is you can't trade him because he's worth nothing. So you either keep him and hold out, or you hope, or you drop him and pick up somebody else. But honestly, in most leagues that you probably drafted Akers in, 10, 12-man leagues, the stuff out on the waiver wire isn't necessarily better than him. So
unless you can get Warren from Pittsburgh, that's really the only possibilities. If Najee's hurt, get Warren. But that's even in the air. The injury report doesn't come out till Tuesday. So another one of the questions I got for you, and we're talking about selling when they're high. there was a lot of, we knew the Dallas receivers were going to be hurt. We knew that it was going to be a struggle getting their passing game in. And watching that game last night was just disgusting, really, from both sides.
It hurt.
Brady didn't really have any red zone tact. I mean, to kick 5 field goals in the first half is very un-Brady like. But particularly with Dak getting hurt and that surgery he's getting now, CeeDee Lamb did not look open or elite very much. Having gone through the game film, I can prove that that's a fairly accurate assessment.
Right.
CeeDee Lamb went high in a lot of leagues, average draft value being in the second round pretty much across the world. How
Yeah.
concerned are you with CD moving forward?
Well, we want to keep this about studs, but when we think about studs that didn't perform, CD absolutely, the wide receiver position is very dependent on the quarterback. And if you're talking, you give me CD with Cooper Rush, I don't really want anything to do with that. I'm probably not starting him next week if I have him, but to that end, you start the best players. And knowing that you have CD Lamb, unless you have a guy that really, really went off this week and you think that he can be reliable, I'm starting CD Lamb, because the worst thing that I have done, and I do it over and over again because we all do it, we overthink our decisions.
Oh, yeah.
We bench our stars, and then we get mad at ourselves. Sunday night comes and our star ended up performing, and we put in the bench guy that we drafted. And a lot of people around TikTok, a lot of people on YouTube, if you're going for a trade or you're going for somebody, you pick the best player. You don't stick your best players on the bench unless they don't give you the best chance to win. So in CD's case, he's probably the best player on the team outside of Zeke now with Dak hurt. But is he going to get the looks from Cooper Rush? Probably not, because that offensive line is terrible. I would say Zeke would probably get more play. Tony Pollard's probably going to get more play. Dalton Schultz will probably get more play. And CD, hopefully they can get a quarterback, because it's going to be rough if they can't, and CD's going to suffer, and you could probably see him going for under 80 catches, maybe, if it's Cooper Rush's decision. Under 80 catches, under 800 yards, and that's not really what you want when you drafted them in the second round, sometimes even the first round, if you were in a league like that.
Yeah, and I know that there's a lot of people out there who like to do the running back start, so the CDs of the world don't apply to them. But CD Lamb is entering into a situation that's going to be very similar to what Cooper Kupp was in on Thursday, where it was painfully obvious that he's the only receiving threat out there. And Cooper Kupp did rise to the occasion. I mean, he was getting triple covered sometimes and still making it happen.
You're talking about Matt Stafford, even with a bad elbow. Matt Stafford is a talented quarterback, and he has proven that time and time again. If we're talking least defensible or best option on a very bad offense, I just want to bring you to like the Baltimore Ravens when Lamar Jackson is hurt, or say the Browns this year. Amari Cooper is supposed to be the number one option there, but yet Donovan Peoples-Jones outperformed him, out-targeted him, outperformed him completely. And, we're looking at another game this Monday, right, where we have, we're recording this before the game on Monday night. What's going to happen with Geno Smith and DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett? These are all things to look at when you're on a bad team and you're the number one option on a bad team. The thing is, CeeDee Lamb isn't the number one option on the bad team, because the quarterback can't get the ball to him. So he's not the option. The option is the guy he can get the ball to. He can put the ball in Zeke's hands. He can put the ball in Tony Pollard's hands. He can throw it to Dalton Schultz. Cooper Rush, from what I've seen, isn't a guy. Like, that's not who you want. CeeDee Lamb makes space. He gets open. And, like, it would be like, I know Chris Godwin is hurt, but if you put Chris Godwin on the Browns, he is your best option. But can Jacoby Brissett get him the ball? We don't know, right?
This conversation, Bob, I've seen no reports of this, so this is just me speculating, but I would really like to think that Jerry Jones is on the phone with San Francisco to bring in Jimmy.
I mean,
because
we've been talking about Jimmy G
Jimmy
on
could make something
on
happen
a
there.
lot of things, and the problem with that is beginning of the season trades aren't, from my understanding, common like this.
No, they're
And
not, and they normally
so
take a while for the quarterback to get up to speed. But at the end of the
Dak is
day,
down. They have Cooper Rush. They didn't draft another quarterback. You go for Jimmy G, or you ask what Philadelphia is doing with Gardner Minshew. You look around the league for the best backup and see what's happening. And this is a prime opportunity for them to trade away Jimmy G, especially knowing that Dallas has two healthy running backs and San Francisco has a bunch of stuff behind their unhealthy running back.
that's
So
true.
the question is, will they do it, and will something get done by week 3? Because I don't see anything happening this week.
Yeah, I just if I was the Cowboys, I'd strongly considering it, especially if Dak's out for more than 4 games.
I mean, I think if you're the 49ers too, you have to consider it as well, because I mean, if you get Tony Pollard, or if you were able to pull down Zeke in a trade for whatever, I mean, you have changed your franchise to do something pretty good. But Zeke's out of the water. He's too expensive. I don't think they'd go for that. I don't think Dallas would trade Tony Pollard. I don't know who's behind Tony Pollard, to be honest with you.
I'd assume they would just do it as a pick, just Garoppolo for
They would
picks.
probably trade. They would probably trade some picks, but draft capital. Knowing that Dallas could potentially be bad this year, I that could be a good trade for San Francisco, but I just don't see it happening.
Yeah, it's very difficult to do, as you said, because it takes the quarterback time to pick up a new system. It's very hard to do that. But let's start with the first player you wanted to showcase in today's episode
Yeah.
that did
So
have to learn a new system.
speaking of quarterbacks in new situations, this guy, Mr. Carson Wentz, my sister actually had friends that met him in a local brewery. But Carson Wentz right here, you'll see that even though they're facing the Jags defense actually didn't look putrid in in the game. They did give up a lead, but if we're
Mhm.
being honest, they've looked worse in the past.
Like you see how open Dotson is there. Just let's
These
click
guys are
back
getting
to that.
open. Jahan Dotson,
He
really,
breaks double coverage there, wide open in the center,
it
just
really
beautiful.
lets Wentz shine, because when you saw it last year, we have a love-hate relationship with Wentz, but everywhere where he goes, unlike Dak Prescott, he makes the team better, and it's a little bit scary to say that. Um, and it's really weird to say that,
Mhm.
but Indy was coming out of garbage last year,
Oh
like
yeah.
just a trash fire. And Wentz brought them on the cusp of the playoffs, but then he Wentzed it up, and they didn't get in. And
Well, he
that's on
also went sit up yesterday. So
and he Wentzed it up yesterday, but they came back and they ended up winning that game. But when we think
let's
about
show it to
Wentz,
the people who didn't see it. This is the start of the
yeah,
fourth quarter. He's up by 2.
they have the lead,
Yeah, they're up
and
by 2, and
here
this is
comes
just
the
a basic
interception. We all know
play.
that Carson Wentz loves to throw interceptions, and at least it wasn't the next interception.
Yeah, so they always Jacksonville goes down, takes a lead, hits a field goal on that drive. And then here is literally the next offensive play Carson Wentz does. A screen pass that gets intercepted by a guy who could have sacked it.
But here's the best thing about Carson Wentz is, you know, Doug was talking to us. Pause the video right here. Doug was talking to us about Trey Lance and read progressions, and Colin Kaepernick and read progressions.
Mhm.
I don't know how quick he's making his read progressions, but he's making decisions really, really fast. He's
Mhm.
either going 1-2, he's either going 1-2-3, or he's already got it in his mind where he wants to go. And when you look at what Jahan Dotson did yesterday as a rookie, and you look at what Terry McLaurin is capable of,
Mhm.
and even when you look at Antonio Gibson, I know that the coach there said that he was going to be the kick returner and whatnot. But
Mhm.
when you look at those those guys, and you look at a guy like J.D. McKissick and Logan Thomas, Justin Herbert threw the ball around a lot to a lot of different players yesterday.
Mhm.
Patrick Mahomes threw the ball a lot to a lot of different players yesterday. They were willing to take chances on new guys. Those new guys ended up catching the ball. Those teams found success yesterday because of that. You look at Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers didn't want to make the plays, didn't look like he could make the plays, and the wide receivers couldn't make the plays. When Christian Watson was open, wide open, touchdown, ready to go, didn't make the plays. You would hope that Alan Lazard, when he comes back, makes Aaron Rodgers better. But as it stands, Carson Wentz, at the value that you probably drafted him, and in most leagues, he's probably undrafted right
He's
now.
probably a waiver wire,
And you
yeah.
could probably get him in the waiver wire. And I have Rodgers in our league together.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy, Carson Wentz, comes out and puts up a game that has 4 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. In our league, and with 300 yards, that's about 27 points. Now, like I said, it's against the Jaguars defense, but no defense in his division outside of Philadelphia would be better than this defense.
That is true. That is so true.
You're looking up at least 4 more games with this type of production possible. If everybody stays healthy, Logan Thomas probably not going to stay healthy. He hasn't played more than a couple games every year. But you look at this team, and you can play the clip here, just what we were talking about.
Yeah, this is the drive after the second interception.
Even Jacksonville's getting after him, too. Jacksonville has a pretty decent defensive line.
Very good, yeah.
Getting after him, and he's making good plays. He's doing what he needs to do. And here it is to win the game right here.
Yeah, he just after the 2-minute warning, down by 2, and
he's putting it
in the end zone.
He's putting it where his wide receiver can catch the ball. His wide receiver caught the ball, right? That's what you want to see out of a quarterback. That's what you want to ask out of your quarterback. So when I say that Carson Wentz surprised me, he did, but it's not like he hasn't done this before. He hasn't always been the best quarterback or the most reliable quarterback, and I don't see him being the most reliable going forward. But he actually has a team with 2 competent wide receivers and 2 competent pass catching running backs, where in Indianapolis, he had a really amazing pass catching running back and running back, and then really only one option in the pass game. You could beg to differ that there was a couple more, but
you could certainly make the argument that he has a better receiving group as a unit in Washington. It's not even close.
You have seen just in one game, and I could be incredibly wrong about this, but you can see just in one game that Washington's offense is in a much better place than they were with anything that they had last year. Will the defense be able to get them out of a jam? Because Carson Wentz will put you into jams. I could foresee a lot of games where Carson Wentz is probably hovering around QB 12, QB 14, maybe. And you're looking at all the starters that have started. Dak's out of the picture now. People are starting Trey Lance. What's he going to do? Tom Brady didn't have the best game of his life. Aaron Rodgers sucked.
Yeah, he did.
Then you have guys like Herbert, Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, guys that you would have drafted, and Josh Allen, 2nd, 3rd, 4th round guys that they're supposed to do good, and we hope that they're going to do good. Then you have guys like Wentz and Cousins, who they didn't come out of the woodwork. We already knew that they were capable and good, but they're putting up weeks where they're 25, 27 points. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that Carson Wentz had more points than Lamar Jackson and more than Joe Burrow, who we're going to talk about a little bit later. But Lamar Jackson, people were like, wow, that was his best game in a long time passing.
Mm-hmm. It was.
We're looking for Lamar for the rushing touchdowns. He didn't get any. If that's the future Lamar and he's passing it more,
it's not going to work out too good.
Dare I say that if you could get Carson Wentz now and trade Lamar Jackson and get Lamar and put a better piece on your team, not in physical foot, not in like if you're the Ravens, but I'm saying
You
if
better be
you're in
getting a lot
fantasy
more
football,
asset than just a 1 week of showing from Carson Wentz. I mean, I love Carson Wentz,
I
but
get it.
I
But
need a real asset in that
here's what
trade
I'm
as well.
saying. Here's what I'm saying. Lamar Jackson is an asset. He's the
Oh
guy.
yeah.
You want him because he has the potential to do a lot.
Hmm.
But looking at 1 week of Carson Wentz with this team, if I could flip Lamar Jackson into Alvin Kamara, or if I can flip Lamar Jackson and somebody else into Derrick Henry, two guys that really underperformed this week,
Hmm.
I
And
might
then
take my
instead pick up
chance.
Wentz on the waivers. Is that what you're saying?
Well, if he's not taken, right? If he's
Hmm.
not taken and you have the opportunity to pick him up and you're a Lamar Jackson owner and say you see the Dak Prescott owner and he ends up sitting there with a running back that underperformed this week, but you know that they can do well, or a wide receiver that, really slam dunked it. I wouldn't I wouldn't say that, you might say, "Oh, I'm going to trade away Carson Wentz. I don't know what his performance is going to be." But I'm saying you could probably get more value out of trading Lamar Jackson. I'm not saying do it, but if you're in a situation where you can do it, you could probably make your team very, very, very good in a long-term situation here, because if we pulled up Washington's schedule, and I'm going to do that real quick here on my phone.
Hmm.
Um, if we pulled up the Commanders' schedule, and you're looking at who they're facing, Jared Goff threw 3 touchdowns against Philadelphia's.
Hmm.
Okay. Carson Wentz and Jared Goff are oftentimes put in that same conversation, but Goff normally does his performance in garbage time when they're like down by a lot.
Hmm.
Wentz could do that.
Well,
Um,
even looking at this last touchdown that Wentz throws, that everyone, he wins the game at, to just show it to everyone here again. Or correction, that's the 2-point conversion. When we
yeah,
look at the touchdown that he throws here, it is 3rd and 8. Now he's in field goal range, so it gives you the possibility of, hey, 2 minutes left, we're going to take a lead.
he
We believe in our
understands the
defense.
situation. He knows that if he doesn't make the play and it goes downfield, all he has to do is put it where his wide receiver can catch it. Because if he doesn't, they get a field goal. He knows he can't
And they
get,
sent
and he
everyone
doesn't get
too.
sacked,
Yeah,
and he puts it right
it's a
where his guy
beautiful
get it.
ball.
Right?
As we watch that coming in, it is only it's only where Dotson can get it. You could
I mean, this could be the overreaction of the whole season,
It could be.
but
Let's not discount that as a possibility.
it looks really good. And I'm looking at their schedule,
Hmm.
okay? And I could be selling you Carson Wentz all day. They've got the Lions.
Yeah,
Jalen Hurts destroyed them. They've
sure did.
got the Eagles. Jared Goff threw 3 touchdowns against them. They've got the Cowboys, who even knows what's happening there.
They're going to try to play low scoring games, and
They've
if you
got
can put them in
the
push,
they've got the Titans.
they look
Dan,
bad
Daniel Jones looked pretty good
for the second half of that game. Yeah,
for the
he
second
did.
half of that game. They've got
Yeah,
the Bears, and we don't know what's going on in Chicago.
they're good in the
How
rain. I found that out.
that rain was amazing, but they've got the
That
Bears.
highlighted them pushing all that water off the field. Gave me joy every time I
They've
saw it.
got the Packers, who Kirk Cousins with
Um,
Justin Jefferson just
pump the brakes. The Packers will be fine. They got themselves a real coach over there.
right. They've got the Colts, who were losing for most of that game against the Texans.
Salvaged a loss out of the
They've got the
jaws of
Vikings.
losing.
That game, you're probably like, they got the Eagles again. Then they have the Texans.
Dude, you're selling me into buying the
Falcons.
bet on
They
them
have the
making the
Falcons.
playoffs right now. You're
They
treating
have
him
the
above
Giants.
Fitzmagic status.
They have the Giants twice in a row. Then they go to the 49ers. Then the Browns. The only problem is if your playoffs end up going into week 16, they face the Browns, and that defense is probably the best defense they face all year.
Oh, at the end of the day, though, if you're getting Carson Wentz as your starting quarterback and you make the playoffs, you are going to be so loaded everywhere else.
That's
You
what
you
I'm
definitely just
saying.
made a great
If
argument for the trade trade a quarterback now, pick up Wentz, and acquire another stud asset
Yeah, because
somewhere
the
else.
idea is,
That
and
is,
this is what a lot of fantasy people are saying, and I agree with it wholeheartedly, is benches are great when players get hurt, but if a player doesn't get hurt, you got to have the best players. And if
mhm,
you could have a team, and your team could potentially look like this, you might have drafted Saquon Barkley in the second or third round. You might have got Justin Jefferson in the first round.
mhm.
You might be trying to hold out from Najee's injury, whatever. In the third round coming around, you probably got a really good player, probably Mike Evans, somewhere in that range. And then in the fourth or fifth round, you probably took Lamar Jackson. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but that's how most leagues went.
Yeah, that's the tiers of players,
If
sure.
I could trade him, even though Lamar has the potential to put up 40 points a game, and I don't see Wentz putting up 40 points a game, if I could get another guy on my team that's going to put up 20 points a game, at least, usually, or give me a better
Yeah, you're talking
ceiling
essentially
at
about
another position.
increasing your flex through the roof, have the strongest flex every week, and being not necessarily the best
You might
quarterback every
even be
week, but
upgrading your wide
competitive.
receiver. You might even be upgrading your wide receiver two or your running back two, right?
Yeah,
So, like, in this scenario, you're probably looking at a team that drafted Jefferson late or drafted Chase late. You've got Chase or you've got Jefferson or you got any of those back end round one running backs. You might even have Devontae Adams and Debo Samuel. If I'm sitting there and I did that, I probably went with the running back zero strategy. I
mhm.
probably took a tight end next. Then I probably took Lamar Jackson. And if I'm sitting there with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I don't know. He was very impressive, but I don't know how long that's going to last. I might shoot to call the owner, hey, Kamara, like, what's up? Like, hey, Derrick Henry, what's up? I've got Lamar Jackson sitting here. I've got, Mark Andrews sitting here. I'll package them both to you for this guy and make two positions better because
And
I have
that's really how you win a fantasy. You go all in early on an investment
yeah,
like this.
if I had that type of week from these players, I would totally do it, but all my players suck. So,
Yeah, well,
I
let's
can't.
go to one here who had a hell of a week, just on fire. A running back that most people probably did not watch because he's in Detroit.
Ugh.
But
Now, before
Swift
you
here
play this clip, and you're playing it anyway, but DeAndre Swift,
is
every
already a
single
blur.
every single pundit, every single fantasy football guy on TikTok, every single person on Twitter, they were either so over the moon with Swift or they were so dead on Swift.
Mm-hmm.
And there was rarely a person in between. You were either drafting him at pick 12 or you were drafting him at pick 24.
Yeah, you were
There,
laughing at people who took him at 12.
there, there was really no way about it. But I'll tell you this: if you got him at 24 in a 12-team league, and you're sitting there with Jonathan Taylor, and you're sitting there with DeAndre Swift, kudos to you because you're most likely going to win your league this year, barring any injuries. This, I know a lot of it looks like garbage time as they're trying to make their way back into a lead, but even with
It's
Amon-Ra
not.
St. Brown,
They got back into this game.
yeah, I
He
know,
was the glue that got him
but they
back.
were down by a lot.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
At one point in time, weren't they down by like 15, 20 points?
At the end of the half, which we'll show you with the AJ Brown highlights, Philadelphia pushed it right into entering halftime, in
So
large part because of AJ Brown.
they never gave up on Swift because even though Swift had three receptions and he had 30 yards receiving and 140 yards rushing, they didn't give up on him. And even though and if you take that and you put it and you say, okay, Jamison Williams also got two goal line carries.
Yeah, he stole two of them, including the one off of this major
You
run
look
that's
at
his first
Swift
play.
and he could have had two more touchdowns. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, come on. Like,
Well,
that's
this actually where we have a pause is a great spot here because the Philadelphia is universally regarded as the best defensive and offensive line combination as a team. And you see how every single player on the screen right now of the Eagles not only is being hit by a blue jersey, but it's being hit by a blue jersey from the correct angle. Swift is right here as the blur
mm-hmm.
and perfect
Play the
hole.
clip. Play the
between the hawk and just but one juke on a corner, and he is super fast. I am not
when I
doing
saw
tricks to
this
mess with
clip,
this.
I asked you, I said, is that sped up? And it's no,
That's
it's
what he
not sped
was.
up. I
And
mean,
here's a hit to this blocking package I just said there. Just one juke and he's gone.
if
He,
his line can keep opening up holes for him like that, he's gonna be he could end up being your running back, the running back one overall, um, for the
and to those who have watched the Strategies of Football series and are continuing to watch it, this is what the joy of a power running game is. From a blocking standpoint, it's I have this guy, I have that guy. And the Lions are coming off and knowing who to hit and crushing it. Even on the plays where they get stuffed, they're still moving the ball down they're still moving the line.
it's been like 3 years work in progress, but even on the plays where he's getting stuffed,
hmm And this
he's
is
still
basically
moving.
every time he touched the ball the entire
He's
game.
still moving forward.
Yeah. The Swift is just a little patience, and he's got the speeds to get to the edge. Like that should have been a 4-yard loss.
Mm-hmm.
There's no doubt about it. And he just has so much vision.
Now, the only question here, there's no question in his talent. The
Mhm.
question is, if they run him like Tennessee ran Derrick Henry last year, does he have the stamina to keep up? Will the touchdowns accumulate? And will the game script continue to dictate they feed him the ball?
Well,
I
I think
think
that play right there sums it up
I
because you're
think
looking
they're
at
going to
fourth
roll it out.
down by 14, and they go for it on 4th and 1. And then here we
Like,
are on
look,
a third
they're
and 10,
down.
and he just hands the ball up right the middle to him.
They're down by 17,
And they're
and they're
running a
still
draw up the
pumping
middle with
him the
Swift.
ball. They're down
And
by they're down by 17
still,
still,
yeah.
and they're giving him the ball. The best part about DeAndre Swift, and people who own him know this. People that wanted to draft him know this. Like in my snake draft, I drafted 4 overall. A little bit too early to take Swift. Swift was gone by the time it came back around.
Sure.
In our auction league, you know, I was a little bit worried putting a lot of money on a Lions player, right?
Mhm.
But what we just saw here tells me that he is never out of the game script.
It seems to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, he seems to be their best skilled weapon. At any given play, he is their best
Yes.
chance to get a first
Amon-Ra
down.
St. Brown has
Almost like
shown that
McCaffrey.
he's very good too. But when you look at a fantasy running back, Joe, you got to think to yourself, okay, is the volume there? Are the opportunities there? Are what's happening? And every single thing that you showed me right now, and every stat that I read, I think it was like 22 carries for 144 yards,
Mhm.
three receptions for 30 yards. When I look at that, that tells me even when they're down, he's in the game getting the ball.
Which is rare for
Unlike
running backs.
unlike Derrick Henry yesterday or Alvin Kamara yesterday. I just talked up Alvin Kamara as a potential trade target, and I still believe in him.
Mhm.
But yesterday, the game script, they were down by a lot. They should have given him the ball more. They didn't, which
Mhm.
made that catch up longer. It took them longer to get back in the game. But when you're pumping Michael Thomas, it's, it might be a little bit easy to forget about Kamara, but he's still the talent there too. So I see DeAndre Swift as a Kamara type that, unlike this first game for Kamara, he's never really out of the game.
Mhm.
Whereas a guy like, who can we say from some of these running backs, unfortunately for Christian McCaffrey yesterday, he was taken out of that game.
Basically, yeah.
10, 15 touches, 10, 13 touches
Yeah,
or
it
something
was
like that
more of a
total.
horrible coaching decision. But
Um,
to your point, if you're looking at someone who you believe could be the next Kamara, because Kamara's been around, he's pretty old for a running back stage, especially if you're in a keeper style environment. This is a guy you can invest in. And,
and
and
we
let's be
don't need it.
real,
And for the people that believe in Swift, we don't need to tell them to believe in Swift. It's just that
it's for
I'm
everyone else. You
I'm
need to get on this bus.
surprised. I'm surprised that he did this well. I was expecting 80 yards, 2 touchdowns. I was expecting maybe 100 yards, 1 touchdown, but I wasn't expecting this style of performance. And to put up the amount of points he did, even without the plethora of touchdowns, was really surprising. And if you played him in DFS or if you own him on your team, you probably won.
Oh
Um,
yeah, and
depending
you
on
look
combination,
at it.
because your combination is probably something like I said, Jonathan Taylor or DeAndre Swift. You potentially pair Joe Mixon with DeAndre Swift.
Yeah, that one's more likely. You took
If
him
you're in the
in the
if you're
turn.
in the well, depending on when you drafted, you might have drafted early and Swift fell. I've seen teams that are really extra gross because they had Jonathan Taylor, DeAndre Swift, and Saquon Barkley in the first 3 rounds
Wow.
because they drafted in like July. So um, that's why
Yeah.
you draft later. That's what happens. But DeAndre Swift, you might have even had Justin Jefferson and DeAndre Swift, and then came back with probably Mike Evans or somebody else in the next round.
Mhm.
You're sitting really good if those players stay healthy. They look really, really, really good, and you're probably championship bound at least.
And to the point, based upon what we just said with Swift and the highlights we're about to show you here with AJ Brown, the Detroit script is going to look like that a lot. I mean, this is a team that had the second pick in the draft that is playing the team that's probably going to win the NFC East, playing a division winner and coming all the way back to 35-38 on basically the legs of Swift. And
Yeah, I
knowing
mean,
that that's going to be the case. And obviously, when they're winning, they pound the ball to him even
yeah,
harder.
Detroit's
So,
defense. Detroit's defense sucks. Um, they're not going to keep them. They're not really going to keep them into any game. This is the
no, they're
same
not.
Detroit. This is the same Detroit last year where they come back, you lose hope, they come back, and then they end up losing by 3 anyway. This happened, felt like 7 times last year. Um, it's really no surprise to me. But like I said, what was a surprise? Swift healthy, best player on the field, and when they're on offense. But let's go to the other side of the offense there with Philadelphia,
Mhm,
because I know you spent $50 out of a possible $400 on Jalen Hurts um,
mhm.
in our auction league. And like I said, I told you, I thought that was too much, but it wasn't like it was an unwarranted price. This game, again, only one game. We're only speaking about one game so far, but AJ Brown just made him look really, really good.
Mhm.
It's the type of thing that AJ Brown had been doing for Ryan Tannehill for how many years now?
Yeah, this right here
Um,
is the throw to me that really gets it out. So he cover 2 zone is what he's facing here. He goes right into the hole of cover 2 zone, and it's a really badly thrown ball. And AJ Brown just right spot in the field, bails him out. It's what elite receivers should do. And just look at that. That throw is underthrown and low, and he bails him
yeah,
out on it. He
I
he
mean,
is the always open on play action. Um, AJ Brown is the missing
I
piece to
mean,
this.
if you look at it, Joe, like you were saying, the missing piece here,
It's a
he is the
chain
missing
mover.
piece to this offense. And a lot of people earlier in the season or earlier in the offseason were like, okay, Hertz isn't what we thought he was going to
Yeah,
be.
this is the play at the
AJ
end of the first
Brown.
half.
I mean, look at that throw.
40
AJ,
seconds left in the first half. That's the difference between going to halftime up
yeah.
14 and up
And
7.
you said, I think we were having this conversation early in the year, like we don't know what AJ Brown is going to do on a new team. The Eagles might run the ball more. They're a run first team. I heard
Mhm.
people saying
Well, they
run
are.
first team. Um, but run first when you have 10 total receptions, 13 targets, and 155 yards. He didn't even score a touchdown, and if you're in a PPR format, he had 25 points,
Oh yeah, he was on fire.
right?
Yeah, no,
And
I'm not fighting any of that. My point is that this makes me wonder: has Hurts in real life, not just in fantasy, where running yards and running touchdowns really boost your value, but in real life, has he surpassed Tannehill? Because Tannehill
yeah,
really
well,
didn't
even
get
when
that
you,
production out of him.
even when you look at AJ, and I'm going to pull it up here real quick, even when you look at AJ Brown's best seasons, Let's go to his more brown pages. Let's
Mhm.
go to career game logs. I don't want all game logs. More brown pages. I just want. Uh, let's just go to 2021 or
Mhm.
2020. Okay, let's go 2020. 2020, he plays
Because Henry played the
in
whole year that year.
every
Solid
game.
running game.
He had 70 receptions. He only had 10 receptions one time against Houston,
Mm-hmm.
1,000 yards, 11 touchdowns. Then you're looking at 2020, or let's go to 2019. 2019 looks like that was his first year in the league.
Mm-hmm.
He did not get over 10 receptions. He had 1,000 yards, 8 touchdowns.
Yeah,
What
and I think
what
it's
I'm
testament
seeing here,
to. Yep.
yeah, what I'm seeing here, even and then last year he was hurt a lot,
Mm-hmm.
um, and slowed him down a little bit, but he still had 63 receptions for 869 yards. What I'm seeing here is the best Philadelphia wide receiver they've had in a long time.
Oh
What I'm
yeah.
seeing here is a quarterback that is not afraid to make bad decisions. He's not a game manager style quarterback like Tannehill is. Tannehill, you know, he got the ball to AJ Brown, but Tennessee, Tennessee had been a good team, but they were a team that relied on Derrick Henry.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you're looking at Jalen Hurts. You're looking at three different running backs that Philadelphia has behind them. Now, like I said, the Lions aren't the best defense to gauge this across, but the Commanders have almost probably the same schedule
Mm-hmm.
as the Eagles do. And what I'm seeing is that if Carson Wentz is good, Jalen Hurts is an even better option.
Oh yeah.
Um, and it's surprising that he played this good, just because we were all, a lot of people were sipping the hate juice or the haterade on him. But I want to give you a fun fact here is that
Yeah.
Jalen Hurts did not throw a touchdown.
Yeah.
He did not throw a touchdown. He threw for 243 yards, rushed for a touchdown, and had 24 points. If we're thinking here, okay, what's going to happen to AJ Brown? Is Philadelphia a run first team? Yes, Philadelphia looks like a run first team, but the passing game isn't far behind. And if a few things go one way or another, Jalen Hurts can throw that ball, get those touchdowns. But if you're just holding on to AJ Brown, you got to look pretty good right now, because that way of throwing the ball gives him the opportunity and the volume, even if he doesn't have touchdowns, to be wide receiver 10, because you have guys like Chase, Cup, Jefferson,
Yeah,
Devontae
but
Adams
the point
really
being is the
pushing
guy's
for him.
immensely talented.
I mean, AJ Brown, you go from a guy that had 11 touchdowns, 10 touchdowns, 8 touchdowns, and then in the offseason we're like, oh, he's on a team that's going to run first. He's not going to do anything. Could be overreaction, right? But
Mm-hmm.
this game, he looked pretty darn good. And Hurts looked pretty darn good against a
Oh
really
yeah.
bad defense. I am curious what's going to happen against a really good defense, but we'll see what kind of
They don't
those
have a
are on
whole
their
lot of those in
schedule.
the NFC East though, so it might
We'll
take
see
a
what's
while
on
till he
their
actually
schedule.
plays one of those. So
Because
that being said,
that being said, you're right. It's AJ Brown in this one game. If you take this one sample size and you maybe average it out across the whole season, you say if he's getting targeted 13 times, if there's not a good cornerback covering him, you say at least 8 catches a game. 8 catches a game over the
oh, he's
next
getting 100 a game then. That's
the next
1,700
eight
yard
game
season. That's Jefferson
the
territory.
next 16 games, 8 receptions. I mean, and then if you figure he gets at least 75 yards for each
Oh,
game,
if he get 8 catches a game, he'll have 100 yards a game, and that's
I
what I'm
mean,
saying. He'll be right there with Justin Jefferson.
you look at it, he could end up being. I would guard to say that he'd be top 5, but
He
just
could be
because of the
though.
guys that are in the top 5. But where you drafted him, your team is probably already stacked. And insofar as that is true, you might even have Cooper Cup and
Yeah, because
AJ
you easily
Brown
could have got him in the 4th or 5th
and
round.
DeAndre Swift all on your team, and you're probably laughing all the way to the bank,
Oh, you
at
are.
least in week 1.
That's so true. Well, let's go to the defense of the week, and this is going to be told through the eyes of Joe Burrow,
Oof.
and ugly game to start for Burrow,
I
but
mean, Twitter
not
said
for Minka Fitzpatrick. You
the
just look at
appendix
that,
is where your football knowledge is.
jumping the route and going to the house. In this highlight, I do not show the 7 sacks that Burrow took because we don't have that much time left in the show. But he's throwing that play right there is an underthrown curl route. That's Joe Burrow making a bad pass. The first interception of Minka is a bad read. This is a strip sack. That's bad offensive line. So this is the Steelers defense just coming at you and dominating. And then boom, TJ Watt jumps, tips the ball, and intercepts it. That's insane. That's just an elite individual player. And I feel for him knowing that he's going to be out for until at least Thanksgiving, possibly the season. We're still waiting on that. And the flag on this play is because Minka hits the receiver too hard after the interception. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, what other blocker gets yelled at? But at the end of the day, every defense lets up points. That's part of what we need to let go here. I mean, acknowledge that. If you're trying to get a shutout, that doesn't exist in the NFL. And Joe Burrow just gets the 2-point conversion here as well. It's just hard to shut everyone down forever, even with 7 sacks. Eventually, you're going to have a drive where you just don't get them. And
Right.
then this right here is Joe Burrow is a really good quarterback. Last play of the game ties it up of
And
regulation.
I wish that would have been the very last play of the game.
Yeah, but it wasn't. And then here is the play, Joe Burrow's second fumble of the game. I mean, that really gave up their chances of winning. Later, obviously, the field goal took it away and made it a tie for them,
Mm-hmm.
or crush a loss for them.
So I
But
mean, the Steelers defense was the defense probably that you wanted to own next to the Miami Dolphins
mhm.
and probably the Chargers.
Oh, they're going to get
Um,
your sacks.
but the issue is that without TJ Watt, that defense does look a lot different.
Mm-hmm.
They're still going to give you pressure, but TJ Watt was such an enigmatic personality and an overall, I mean, a Hall of Fame style player. When you look at what happened there, with that pressure, it allows Minka to do everything that he does good. If that pressure doesn't keep coming, is their defense still good? Absolutely, it's still good.
Well, the
Is their
answer
defense the best in the league without TJ Watt?
no, it's not.
No, it's not.
And Yinzer as the Steelers Nation will try to tell you that, well, TJ comes off the field for 40% of the plays anyway. Last year, he missed the equivalent of 5-man games, being hurt for 3 and then
Yes,
getting
but the
injured early in
40% of
others.
the game, the 40% of
It's
the
not going
plays
to be
that
the same.
the 40% could be all of the times that the Steelers get turnovers.
Mhm.
Like that's what people aren't looking at, I think. And as part of the Yinzer Nation, when you watch that game, the plays that TJ Watt is on the field in are amazing. And I could be wrong. Maybe that Minka Fitzpatrick interception of the house was when TJ wasn't on the field, but
No,
I'm pretty
TJ was
sure he
there.
was.
He almost sacked him on it.
I'm pretty sure he was.
No, he
And
almost sacked him on it. Yeah.
and the funny thing here is, we look at surprises, and the Steelers defense, that was quite a surprise against an offense that was in the Super Bowl last year, and they caused multiple turnovers.
It
Joe
also does
Burrow,
need to be noted that
Joe Burrow himself
during
had 5 turnovers.
that also was the first game that all 5 of the new Cincinnati line played together.
Yeah,
How you have a
and
new line and you don't have them play together is beyond me. And then
and
your
you
first
look at
opponent's TJ.
go
What are
talk
you
to
doing?
Aaron Rodgers. Go talk to Aaron Rodgers. But if you look at what Cincinnati did, they still almost won the game. And this says something about the Steelers offense, which was but Joe Burrow still threw for 300 yards on the Steelers defense, and that's with an overtime. He still threw for 2 touchdown passes. Jamar Chase is still a stud. T. Higgins was out for most of that game. That game could have went a lot different if T. Higgins is in there for most of that game. It could have changed the Steelers' fortune. TJ Watt maybe not hurt. They might not have won the game, but they have more to fight for in the season. You think about Mitch Trubisky coming back. Is he the best player? What's going to happen? A lot of question marks around the Steelers right now, but the defense is really not one of them,
Mm-hmm.
even without Watt. The question is now that without Watt, is the defense going to be able to support a bottom six offense? Because
Yeah,
that's what the offense is.
and certainly when you're looking in the realm of fantasy, not that wins matter, but when you know your offense is coming from behind and just chucking the ball, the likelihood of your defense being put in bad field position and therefore letting up points and hurting you in fantasy becomes very real. So that's why it's almost better to have a mediocre defense with a great offense behind them, such
Mhm.
as the Packers, even though it didn't show this week, because you know at the end of the day, when teams are just throwing for their lives to trying to make up for it, that's when interceptions are more likely and sacks are more likely. And in general, your offense is owning time possession, so it's just harder to let up points when you're not on the
Mhm.
field.
Yeah.
So that's what the Steelers really were as a defensive fantasy, a boom or bust candidate. They've led the league in sacks the last 5 years, could be great, and they
And
might do it
the
again. But
the issue with them though is their strength of schedule. So I mean,
oh, it's
if you look
brutal.
at who the Steelers are playing in any given week here,
Yeah, their next 5 games are New England, Cleveland, the Jets is a give me, and then they got Buffalo and Tampa. I mean, do you really want to line up Buffalo and Tampa, knowing that that's on the horizon? So Steelers were having a great week. I greatly want to caution people from overspending to trade for them because there is some real offenses coming around the corner.
yeah, I
And then
mean,
not to mention when you're in your playoffs, you play Lamar.
usually defenses are part of a trade. They're not something you would trade for. But knowing all of that, if you are a league that has defenses as a unit, and you can get and you have Carson Wentz in your back pocket, and you could change your fortune with maybe Kamara or somebody different, I say you go for it because the strategy here is to get the best. And with depending on the news with TJ Watt, Steelers defense is still pretty good, but they have New England is going to be garbage. That game's going to be garbage. Um,
Sure is. No fancy points
Cleveland,
there.
Cleveland, that game's going to suck too. If I'm looking at the Steelers and I'm looking at their defense, the only teams that probably have a good chance to shred it, like we talked about on our first episode, are from week 5 on, minus Atlanta. Um,
Mhm.
and even Atlanta might. Who knows what they're doing down there? They looked okay for a couple quarters. Um,
Looked like a land at the end, though.
you really look at what their schedule looks like we talked about at the beginning of the year, and I just don't see them. I don't see you wanting to own that defense, but if you do, you're still you're still probably playing them, and you're going to be okay for a lot of the time.
Well,
But
they'll still get you your sacks, and that's the whole reason you would have drafted them for fantasy was for their sacks.
yeah,
The
but you
the
didn't draft
5
them high.
interceptions isn't always there.
You probably draft them in the last round or second to last round,
Oh,
so
yeah.
you're not really asking for much. You just don't want them to lose you points, and I don't think they're going to lose you points. But I could definitely see some 30 points 30, 40 points being scored by Josh Allen, though. I will say
Absolutely.
that's
So,
probably going to happen.
on that note, this is gonna probably be a weekly thing that we're going to upload live here to YouTube, so get ready for, fantasy studs and duds from local football flavor. So we thank everyone out there for watching. As always, be a team player. Click like and subscribe. We need that more than ever. So we thank you for being with us, and we'll be with you again here, next show.